welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone, episode number 129 for the 8th of April, 2011. Richard Saunders here with you once again from Sydney, Australia. Today's episode, a couple of really great interviews lined up for you. We're going to start with an interview I conducted with Michael Marshall from the Merseyside Skeptics, from Skeptics with a K podcast. Now, it seems to me that most of the time Marsh and I end up bashing homeopathy, which is a pretty worthwhile thing to do when you think about it. That interview will be coming up pretty soon. Following that, it's part 2 of my interview with James the Amazing Randi. And strangely enough, we seem to spend a lot of time bashing homeopathy. I think I can see a trend here. But we also discuss things like his $1 million challenge and TAM Las Vegas. Now, in the past week, I was on the treadmill, trying to lose a few kilos, and it's one of these modern ones that has a video screen, and you plug your iPhone in, and you can listen to all your favourite podcasts, or watch movies you might have on your iPhone. And I put on a copy of Brian Dunning's Here Be Dragons, An Introduction to Critical Thinking. And I am glad I did. I saw it a couple of years ago, and it's certainly worth watching again. So I can recommend that. Just Google Here Be Dragons, Brian Dunning, and you can download that Introduction to Critical Thinking. It goes for about 40 minutes for free. Well worth a look. But now let's start the Skeptic Zone with a very important message.
Hello listeners, Dr Rachie here with an important message for all fans of science in Australia. In the last 24 hours, we found out through a leaked document from the government that they plan to cut something like $400 million from the medical research funding budget to be announced in May. If these cuts are approved, it will be devastating for medical research in Australia. Already, with the primary funding board, the NHMRC, there is only a 23% success rate for grants, so 77% of grant applications do not get funded, even though about 70% are deemed to be good enough. So a further 20% cut in the budget, as proposed, will drop the success rate for grants to under 20%, probably to about 18%. Now, in practical terms, this means that less projects in Australia will get funded, people will lose their jobs, and it will be a very big step backwards for medical research in Australia. Now, we also know that these proposed $400 million cuts to the budget have not yet been signed off, so we're hoping to change the minds of the politicians, and you can help. Part of the reason for these cuts is that the Gillard government made an election promise to have the budget in surplus in Australia by 2013. They think that by cutting medical research funding, ordinary Australians and working families won't care or won't notice. The irony being that many researchers are obviously working families and ordinary Australians, and on top of that, medical research benefits us all. So the Gillard government has already scrapped 2 successful education programs in Australia run by the Australian Academy of Science, and these were designed to boost science teaching across Australian primary and secondary schools. So there is a precedent for cutting science funding. There will be rallies across Australia on Tuesday, April the 12th, in Sydney and in Melbourne at 1 o'clock, and in Adelaide on the same day at 12:30. These rallies are not just for scientists, but we're also encouraging members of the community to come along who may have benefited from medical research. We also would like you to sign the petition at Research Australia, and there's also a petition at GetUp. All the information you need is on discoveries.needdollars.org, and if you go to the Get Involved tab, the information about how you can write a letter to your MP, sign the e-petitions, or come to the rallies is there. Even if you can't come on Tuesday, you can follow the proceedings on Twitter by searching for the hashtag #ProtectResearch. And why not send us a supportive tweet on Tuesday so we know how many people value medical research in Australia. This is Dr Rachie, rallying to protect medical research.
that great theme music. I really love that theme music. I think that's the major reason I listen to Skeptics with a K. Apart from my guest today, it's Michael Marshall. Hi.
Hi, Richard.
Really nice to talk with you. You know, it's really strange to talk to somebody like you because I think I'm listening to a podcast all the time.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing. I'm an avid Skeptic Zone listener as well. So, when you first said hello to me, it's not only like listening to a podcast, but it's also like listening to someone or speaking to someone you've known for a long time. When I think this is the first time we've ever had an actual vocal conversation. Everything's been over Twitter and email and things like that.
You know, you're absolutely right. Now, that is strange that we've never actually spoken to each other yet. Our voices are so familiar to each other. That's the modern world for you.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Now, Skeptics with a K, what a tremendously successful podcast that is. I know you've got many listeners all around the world. What started that? Why was that podcast formed?
That's a good question, and it seems to be doing all right, really. We started the Merseyside Skeptic Society around about, February 2009, something like that. That was me, Mike, and Colin were pretty much the first members along there, and I think it was always Mike Hall's long-term vision to have a podcast because he just thought they were kind of cool. But he wasn't really sure how it would work and what we'd do. But I think I'd never met Mike before February 2009, and we just started, we got together in the pub and started having a chat, and there was a rapport kind of instantly that we realised that we had a fairly decent ability to sort of riff off each other a little bit. So I guess once we were regularly meeting up and having conversations in the pub, it became fairly apparent that pretty much sticking a microphone in the middle would be a podcast, and then we just sort of polished it around the edges, really. And Colin's there doing a fantastic job as a bit of a stabilising force, really. I think he's a very underrated part of the team because me and Mike tend to go off in lots of different directions, and Col's there to sort of bring us back a little bit to ground us. So, that's kind of how it came from, really. More that just the conversations we were already having in a pub. And felt it'd be good to stick a microphone in the middle, like you do, with a think tank. You stick a microphone in the middle of the pub and let things happen around it. In the end, when we started putting the show together, we realised we had to move it somewhere, so we're in Mike's back bedroom whenever we record with the dinosaur wallpaper and the various Doctor Who accoutrements which line the place. I don't know if we mentioned on one episode, we walked in there and Mike had a full-size Dalek. Just sat, just there, hadn't announced it, hadn't said, oh, by the way, there'll be a Dalek in the room. We just walked in, there's this massive Dalek there, which I think was the Dalek we ended up using at QED. And he's got all sorts of bizarre Doctor Who stuff around there. But that's kind of how it came about, really, I guess.
Well, every home should have one. I've got a couple here in my bookshelf, as a matter of fact.
Do you have any lifelike Cybermen masks? He's got two of them as well that you can actually put on your head.
No,
full heads.
I've got a Cyberman fridge magnet. Does that count?
I think it does count. And I don't like sci-fi that much. I'm there amongst all this stuff. I'm not a big fan. It's a sort of dirty little secret.
Oh, well, there had to be somebody in the skeptical movement who wasn't a fan. Oh, well, never mind. I guess you're it. So the podcast is, as I was saying, very successful. You must get letters, correspondence from people all around the world who tune into Skeptics with a K.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we actually seem to have a fairly decent fan base in Australia and New Zealand, oddly enough. It seems like every other person who emails us is from Australia, so I don't know whether it's that you guys sort of get our sense of humour or whether we both have a lack of sense of humour. I'm not sure, but we tend to do all right there. But no, it is great to get sort of messages from all around the world and people saying, we're in the middle of, a sort of fairly biblical state in America, and they like to tune in to sort of cope with how their day-to-day lives are filled with complete religious nonsense, and there's us there sort of taking the piss a little bit. So it is really, really cool, but very surreal. And I know it kind of always sort of freaks us out a little bit whenever we meet anyone who's heard of us ever, because I was at TAM in London. It was the second TAM London, so the one just gone, and a woman just walked up to me and shook my hand and said, this is from Carl Mamer from the Conspiracy Skeptic podcast over in Canada, and he said, if you are going to London and you meet Marsh, make sure you shake his hand. Which is very surreal that someone from Canada had sent an envoy over just to grab me by the hand. Very bizarre.
It's good stuff too. It's very flattering, and occasionally people come up to me and wish me well, and they enjoy the Skeptic Zone podcast, and it's really enjoyable. So moving on from the podcast, you're also the Merseyside Skeptics probably are most famous for 1023 and the global action now against the modern witchcraft of homeopathy. That must give you an awful amount of satisfaction and frustration at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's satisfying and utterly surreal just how big the campaign got, really. You know, when it started, again, you know, one of the first things we did when we sat down and created the Merseyside Skeptic Society, you know, it was Mike's kind of first point in the agenda. We're not just going to do Skeptics in the Pub. We'll do a Skeptics in the Pub talk, but we want to be a rounded society that does other stuff. And one of the things he wanted to do was to, you know, take a look at something like an alternative medicine, and homeopathy was on the list, and it sort of sprung from there, really. There was a point, I think, in sort of August or September, maybe even slightly earlier than that, where there's myself, Mike, and Andy Wilson, who used to be on the Merseyside Skeptics board. We just sat in a pub discussing targets, and homeopathy came up, and that's where it was cemented. And the campaign, from that little start of 3 men in a pub in Liverpool, to see it all around the world and see people wearing T-shirts, taking so-called overdoses of the homeopathic remedies. And you obviously were in from the first year, weren't you? You
was, yeah.
One of our first initial international sort of venture was you guys outside a pharmacy in Sydney.
In Sydney, yes.
But to see just how big it got has been amazing, with people in, you know, this time when we did it, there was, I think it was 30 countries, 70 cities, and 1,600 people around the world that we know of, and that's just the ones who got in touch with us. We keep seeing little people firing through a random video saying, oh, by the way, I joined in as well, and I was in, you know, Rosario in Argentina and things like that. So it's just phenomenal, and I hope it's kind of adding to a bit of a zeitgeist, or a kind of a groundswell, really, because there are things that are happening in the UK with homeopathy is taking a real hit. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the media at the moment where they're very critical of homeopathy, which is great, and I'd never say that 1023 is the reason for that, but I'd like to think that we've added to the calls for it, and we've added a little bit of noise to say, actually, we want that people aren't going to sort of stand around and have these, you know, witchcraft, as you say, sugar pills, being flogged as medicine to people who don't know any better. You know, they're not gullible people as such. They're just people who don't have the facts, and it's okay to be wrong. It's just not okay to exploit people's wrongness.
Well, you know what? Consumers all around the world basically have been lied to. Homeopaths still say that their mixtures contain a tiny amount of this, that, and the other. And as 1023 points out, clearly there is nothing in it. Forget about it. Who cares what may have been once near it in whatever concentrations? That's irrelevant. It's in the packet, and at the end of the day is nothing. Well, you hope it's nothing, because there are all sorts of people out there who call themselves homeopaths making up their own magic brew, and you never know. But at least the stuff in the pharmacies, you can almost bet your next hot dinner on that there'll be just nothing in it.
Yeah, and that's kind of the ironic thing, because, you know, when we launched the campaign and we did our overdoses here in the UK, we took homeopathy provided by Boots, specifically because we trusted Boots to sell us nonsense legitimately. We thought, well, these guys, yes, they're going to sell us something pretending it's medicine, but they're not going to actually lie to us even further and put something in there. They're going to sell us nothing. It's, you know, we can trust them to do that, which is bizarre. And it's odd. I mean, I'm never sure whether to say that consumers are being lied to as such. I mean, the system of homeopathy, I think, absolutely lies to customers, lies to consumers. But from my experience, I'd say individual homeopaths, they're not, as far as I can tell, most aren't liars. They just simply don't know and haven't ever bothered asking. You know, they've never bothered asking the question as to why this works, how can you tell it works. They're people who have perhaps tried it themselves and been taken in by the very persuasive charms of the placebo effect and regression to the mean and all these other things that we know are huge psychological factors that take part in people's recoveries, nothing to do with the magic pills. And it's people who've been taken in by these powerful factors who then go on to try and flog it themselves and have never had the intellectual rigour to sit down and say, well, actually, let's look at whether this really works first. It's the classic, it worked for me, and therefore I'll go and sell it. So I wonder just how many homeopaths know it's nonsense or suspect it's nonsense. I'd genuinely think the majority, as that I've come across, would genuinely believe they're doing well, which is why you get things like, Homeopaths Without Borders, people going over to Haiti with suitcases filled with pills. And it's something that the comedian over here in England, although he's one of you guys, Matt Parker, who's a mathematician, he always makes the point that what's really upsetting about Homeopaths Without Borders is they went to Haiti, they took something there in pill bottles, they made all that effort, and at the end they handed out nothing.
Yeah.
And it's a remarkable thing, and that's almost worse than somebody knowing it's nonsense and selling it to someone with a cold. To go there genuinely believing it, to get there and to be handing people who are dying of all sorts of things in the wake of a natural disaster, to hand them sugar, even believing it'll help, is just a remarkably frustrating thing, because those people, their intention is absolutely right. They want to help, they want to do something to lessen the sadness and lessen the suffering, but they're doing nothing, and they're just wasting time and wasting resources. So it's incredibly frustrating. Yeah,
I suppose they are. There are two sides to this. You can look at it from a certain angle and say that they probably, in some cases, gave comfort to people. Oh, here's this guy from another country, or this woman from another country come all the way, and they're trying to do something. But the flip side of that coin, of course, and what we've seen happening in this country is where people have taken magical, vibrational witchcraft sugar pills instead of real medicine when real medicine was required. We've had at least 2 horrible deaths, to my knowledge, in this country alone, and the blame can be put purely and squarely on homeopathy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and those are the cases where the harm, the what's the harm question becomes completely answered. This is the harm, and here in the UK, we've seen exposés where, I say exposés, it's not even that much of an exposé. Homeopaths are giving homeopathic alternatives, no-sods, to the MMR vaccine, and it's not really an expose, because we all know it's happening. I mean, maybe the widespread, the mainstream public didn't know it was happening, but there's nobody that I would speak to who would be surprised by the fact that homeopaths would do this, but they are doing it. They're giving alternatives to that. You can go into health food shops and buy homeopathic remedies that will prevent you getting malaria, which is great until you actually go somewhere and then get malaria because they're ineffective. And there is a phenomenal amount of harm being done by people who genuinely think they're helping, I believe, but you get to a point where, does their intention of thinking they're actually helping, does that matter if the net result is people dying, people suffering unnecessarily, people wasting what time they have? You have people who've got terminal diseases who forgo medical treatments that would prolong their lives in favour of these supposed miracle cures, and the miracle cure of homeopathy to keep their cancer at bay, and they die 6 months, a year before they would have died, or than they could have lived.
They could have lived
under medical treatment.
Yeah. Absolutely. In some cases, they could have simply lived. They could have fixed their problem and gone on living. There was a baby died here a few years back. Her parents are now in jail because they neglected the baby. They said, well, we'll use homeopathy to cure our baby's condition, a curable condition. Now, but I also think that with all this action worldwide, especially in the UK and more increasingly worldwide, what do you think the homeopaths are thinking about this? They've never seen an opposition to this like this in their lives. They must be completely taken aback. Yeah, well,
the response we've had, the first time we did it, the response was sort of a bit of panic and sort of like after the fact attempts at crisis management from people who were very sort of amateurish at it, and we saw some like fantastic own goals from some of the homeopaths, that kind of thing, and they clearly were unprepared for what we did, with the mass overdose in the UK. And then when it came almost exactly a year later, it was a year and 5 days later, and we did it again, they were just as panicked and just as surprised. And, that actually astounded us, that had they not prepared for this, had they not thought, right, this has happened, how, that cat's out of the bag, how do we deal with that? But, it was still a complete surprise to them, and there was still this sort of panic. And obviously we get the same old kind of stuff, which is, that anyone who's opposing homeopathy in that way is in the pocket of Big Pharma, which I think is a phenomenal argument to make, for a couple of reasons. First of all, being that the homeopathic industry is hardly shy of a few pennies itself.
Yes.
You know, you look at the giants of the homeopathic industry, and you look at like Boron and there's Waleda and things like that, and we're talking hundreds of millions, if not billions, of pounds a year. Or dollars a year that they're making from this stuff. So to say that it's big business, it's big pharma that are suppressing this for profit is a phenomenal thing to say. And then on top of that, you know, you've got examples where there's the huge pharma company Merck, who actually own 7 Seas, which is a vitamin company. I don't know if it's just here in the UK or whether it's internationally. I don't know enough about it. But 7 Seas have a homeopathic range. And it's because Merck have figured out that, yes, we can spend all our money developing new products, or we can just sell sugar and pretend it's a product and make more cash.
Yeah.
You know, so there's times that homeopathy themselves itself is being sold by the pharma companies. And, you know, the number of times that I've been on radio debates, things like that, where somebody has said, well, actually, all this opposition is just funded by the pharmaceutical companies. And it's always a homeopath who says that. They just want to stop the debate there and say, sorry, of the two people talking here, one of us is selling homeopathy. Is there any surprise that you're against this? You know, one of us is directly making cash from this. And people don't see that part of the argument when a homeopath says, oh, you know, they're saying this because they're scared about profiting from it. Well, you know, that you're obviously profiting from it. You don't give your homeopathy away for free. It's remarkable. The idea that homeopathy is feared by Big Pharma because Big Pharma can't sell it is ludicrous, because if it worked, they absolutely would sell it. You know, it's cheaper, it's easier to manufacture, you don't have to go through safety tests, you don't even have to go through product development, you just come up with something and make it pretty much. You know, a couple of provings is so much cheaper and easier than getting ethical approval for clinical trials. If it worked, they'd sell it.
Why would they bother with anything to do with provings or shakings or bangings on table with leather-bound books? Why would they bother? Why wouldn't they just have a machine that made sugar pills, put them in different packages and say, this is for hay fever, this is for headaches, this is for sleeping? I mean, who's gonna check?
Well, I do wonder. I'd love to see how the big companies actually do it. I mean, I suspect they don't do the one drop into 99, etc., etc. I've seen machines that do the Korsakoff method. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't, no.
The Korsakoff method is the most amazing thing about homeopathy. And I've often thought that we've missed a trick slightly in debates, because we tend to say, well, homeopathy, you take a drop of onion juice, stick it into 99 drops of water, shake it, take it from there and put it into another 99 drops of water, etc., etc. And you very quickly lose people when you start doing that. They start just hearing numbers and 99s and drops and things.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah.
But the Korsakoff method is amazing, because obviously to do that whole cereal dilution takes a long time and produces a lot of kind of waste products at each stage. So it would be great if you could come up with a way that didn't involve that. And Korsakoff, I forget when he was from, he did it by putting a drop of your onion juice or whatever in your 99 drops of water and giving a good suckus and all that. And then you pour all of that out and refill your test tube or whatever from scratch. The idea being that as you've poured it all out, there's always little droplets that stick to the side of the tube.
Good grief.
So it's not fully empty, and that is just, it turns out that's enough to constitute keeping the water memory. So you fill it, shake it, empty it, fill it again, shake it, empty it, do that 30 times. It's rinsing. You just rinse the thing. And I know that there are machines that do this on an industrial scale, just, you know, because that is a very simpler action for a machine to take than a drop into 99 and shake and a drop into another 99 and, you know, having 30 buckets lined up. That simple shake and fill it takes almost no time. And I'm absolutely stunned I was absolutely stunned when I came across that. And I think that is one of the dirty secrets of homeopathy that I think has to be told a little bit more, because when people see that, and there's other things like, I think it's a radionics device. I saw someone using a radionics device to create homeopathy, and I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. And they take the homeopathic product and put it on a little metal plate and press a button and it starts to vibrate. And then they'll take that off and they'll put a vial full of empty homeopathic pills, so the blank pills, put it on the plate and press the button to play the same vibration.
No.
And that copies the vibration of the homeopathy into the new pills. No, it turns out that works, which is fortunate, because it'd be a hell of a lot of time and effort to actually do it the old-fashioned way. So it's just very, very lucky that the water memory and all that kind of stuff can be translated in that kind of way. I mean, it's staggering.
I'm sorry.
Because obviously, you know,
sometimes I'm gobsmacked.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I saw, there's a couple of videos on YouTube, and this is one of the things that's happening in the UK, because the the regulations that say what homeopathy you can sell and what you can't are based very much, I believe, on the method you produce them. So you have to do it a very specific way as set down. And if you're using radionics devices, or I'm not sure if the Korsakoff method counts or not, but certainly the radionics device to copy it falls outside of what you're legally allowed to do to be not counted as a medicine. So there's going to be all sorts of sparks in the UK when a few complaints that are being put in work their way through the system. I think that could be a real win for us somewhere down the line.
You know, I'm listening to all this, I can't help but thinking that one day this is going to make a terrific book. The whole, no, I'm serious, the whole story, and why you're talking to me now, you know, this is the story, the adventures are forming in my mind of the formation of the skeptics and leading through specifically to 1023 and including things like this bizarre methods that they come up with in order to produce these pills. I think it would make a terrific book, and I would encourage you to keep extensive notes. So one day, you know, when you're retired and you think, well, what am I going to do in my retirement? Oh, I know. Way back in the early part of the century, I was in part of this campaign which saw the end of homeopathy, and I'm sure people want to know about it.
Yeah, I probably should take notes. At the moment, I just have a collection of anecdotes that I tell over a pint in the pub, increasingly to the frustration of my girlfriend, who's heard them all before.
Yeah.
But there are some great stories. You know, from the first overdose in the UK, there was someone, I believe, in Bristol, who bought their remedy from Boots. And I don't know if you get the click packs over in Australia, but over here we have them in little vials that you click the top and
we get
pills are dispensed.
Blister packs here. Like,
right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're not supposed to touch them with your hands, apparently. You take away some of the vibrations if you actually touch them. You're supposed to click it straight into your mouth.
That's what I've been doing wrong. Oh,
that's why it's never worked.
That's why it's never worked.
Richard.
Damn it.
Well, some of these little click packs you get, you get 80 pills in there, and these tiny, tiny little pills, you can barely hold one in your hand, little round sugar balls. To give it the illusion of real medicine, it's got one of those glass vials inside that, if this breaks, it seals off the end and you can't get any of your pills out if you try and rough it up or try and damage it. It's got one of those in there to partly so the glass will keep the vibrations intact and partly so that you can't do exactly what we did en masse, essentially. So somebody bought their homeopathy from Boots in Bristol, the chemist, and it was broken. They couldn't get any out, and they went back to the till. And I swear this is true, or at least I've been informed this is true.
Yeah.
They said, look, I just bought this stuff and I can't get any out because the seal is broke. Could you replace it? And the girl behind the till said, yeah, sure. And the guy said, well, could you hurry up because I actually have to go and overdose on this in 3 minutes outside. And the girl behind the till went, oh yeah, no problem. It's amazing, I mean, when I bought it for the first overdose, it was on a special offer in Boots.
Yeah.
It was 3 for 2, so I bought 3 packets of homeopathy all at once, and I was there with my girlfriend at the time, and she bought some paracetamols, and the guy who was behind the till scanned the 3 packets of homeopathy, not a word, got to the paracetamols and said, okay, now are you taking any of the medication? Is there anything you need to know about? Are you allergic to paracetamol? And I thought we just bought nearly 200 homeopathic pills, and you've not said a word.
Well, I had a similar experience here in this country. So, an odd experience. When I bought this, you can hear that rattling. That's a packet of homeopathic pills. And I bought these homeopathic pills just the other day. Dr Rachie and I went into a pharmacy because we're doing media at the moment about homeopathy here in this country. We have to have some pills, and we were looking at the shelf, and a young lady came up to us and said, "Do you need any help selecting what to take?" And we said, yeah, we're just buying a box of sleeping pills to overdose on. And I'm taken aback. And she says, don't you believe in homeopathy? It's, well, no. Oh, I see. And I asked, what's your role here? She said, well, I'm the naturopath here at the pharmacy. Oh, yeah. We got into a bit of an argument, and her clinching argument as to why homeopathy works, when I pointed out, I said, the listed ingredients on the packet aren't in here at all. You know that. And she said, well, of course, it works by metaphysics. Now, listeners in Australia, this is happening in your pharmacies. There are people in your pharmacies who will give you advice about medicines to take based on metaphysics, the paranormal, the supernatural. So in this country, we are working very hard to stop this. These people should not be anywhere near a pharmacy.
Oh God, absolutely not. I'm really fascinated that she was a naturopath as well, because this is another angle I thought was really, really interesting. Is that I once got an email, and some of the emails that I get, the hate mail, are fairly spectacular, and I occasionally blog them for a few giggles. And when we were at QED and I completely ran out of material for the 20-minute slot I'd given myself to tell the story, and then managed to tell the story in 7 minutes because I speak far too fast, and I had 13 minutes to just fill on stage in front of 350 people. It was a terrifying moment. And I started reading out hate mail. But one of the most interesting pieces of feedback I think we got was from a naturopath in Canada or America, one of the two, I can't remember which. Any Canadian or American listeners will hate me for not knowing the difference there. But I forget, it was a while ago now.
Aren't you from Birmingham? Sorry, go on.
Yeah. But her feedback to me was, could you make it more clear on the 1023 site that there isn't anything in homeopathy and it's not herbal medicine? Because a lot of people confuse herbal medicine with homeopathic medicine, and I'm a naturopath, and I know herbal medicine works, whereas homeopathy is complete nonsense. And I thought, well, for one thing, our whole slogan is, there's nothing in it. I mean, I don't know how we can make it more clear than that. So I said to her, you know what, we feel we've made that point clearly, and it's our central message. But if you feel that you want to make the point, if you start a naturopaths against homeopathy, if you start there is nothing natural about homeopathy, we'll back you to the hilt, because I would love to see that. But you absolutely never see it. And it's one of the sort of the red flags of pseudoscience is when somebody in the peripheries of what they're doing, when they see someone else in the peripheries of the same thing that they're doing, and they disagree fully with that other person, they never criticise them. You don't get acupuncturists saying to people who believe in reflexology, that, there isn't this, it's not all about your organs, it's all about meridian lines. You don't get fights between chakra specialists and chiropractors saying it's not your chakra, it's your subluxations. You don't get that. People, they're band together. It's Cam United, as it were.
It really is. It's amazing when you think about it. They're loath to attack each other. They consider real medicine to be the enemy.
Which is amazing, because the people that practice real medicine and the people who do the research and things like that, the people they attack are each other. Because they say, oh, you've come up with this finding, let me see if you're wrong, let me do everything I can. That's what peer review is. Oh, you're saying this works, let me do everything to prove it's wrong, and if I can't, we'll say you're right for now until someone can prove you wrong. And if you keep ahead of the rug being pulled under you for long enough, then you're science, essentially.
It's true. It's absolutely true. When I go to the Mind Body Wallet festivals here, I mean, you walk past people who are next to each other in their little stands, their little stalls, with completely contradictory messages. But they're all happy, They're all on the side of peace and love and new age vibrational openness to the oneness of the blah, 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 blah.
Well, frequently you get people who sell multiple things that are internally conflicting. Yeah. You'll get someone say, oh, well, I can align your chakras, and then I'll do some chiropractic on you, and then a bit of Reiki, and then some reflexology. And you get people who will specialise in multiple, completely contradictory modalities, which it must be a phenomenal... It must either be, as I say, a complete lack of intellectual rigour, not wanting to... no curiosity, no interest, and no intention to get to the bottom of something. Or, if not that, it must be a phenomenal exercise in segmentation in the brain to say, actually, well, you're looking at this now, I'll do this bit. Partly
both, I would probably say, and also along with that is a large dose of, wow, I'm making a lot of money doing this.
Well, I bet it's that, although, I mean, I'm always loath to go to the money angle on individual therapists. I mean, we've mentioned I do Skeptics UK. One of the other shows I do is called Righteous Indignation, and one of the things we do there is we have people who are proponents of viewpoints we disagree with on to talk about what they believe. And the number of people we've spoken to who are, crystal healers and, Reiki practitioners and all sorts of different things. And I genuinely don't think money is the main motivation for them, because I think a lot of people don't make a lot of money out of it. I think they make enough to get by, but I don't think they're living more comfortably than the average person working a conventional job. I think it's more the ego boost of feeling like they're helping people or being the healer, being the one who can turn people around, who can have someone walk in with a back that's had them in agony for the past 3 years, and with a couple of cracks make them feel like it's better. I think it's almost like the ego trip, or almost a semi messianic complex, of being the one who can heal. I don't need medicine. I didn't need to do all that studying. I can do my alternative stuff and have an alternative way of knowing. I genuinely think that's probably a bigger motivation than greed and finance that I've seen. Although you've been in this game a lot longer than me, and I appreciate you probably.
I've seen both. No, you're absolutely right, and I would absolutely concede your point. Yes,
psychics, on the other hand, are about the cash.
I suspect that most people are, and psychics too. Most people I've met are genuinely deluded but sincere. They are nice people. When you get down to the brass tacks, they're people who want to do good by other people. Fine, that's a very nice way to put it. But yes, of course, there are people who realise, what a sweet deal this is. Roll up and I'll take your aura photograph, or I'll align your chakras, knowing full well that it's just ridiculous. But for them, it's easy money. So yes, there is definitely a combination there, I think.
Yeah. Actually, this probably speaks to something we were talking about earlier, but it's just occurred to me that you have to hear this one, because this is the other best method I've ever heard of producing homeopathy. That we were told by someone who had studied some homeopathy to a point where they realised it was bullshit, and they were told this, and this is how we produced the mass homeopathy we took for QED, which was entirely genuine, entirely legitimate by the means prescribed by some homeopaths, is if you have one or two homeopathic, say, arnica tablets at 30C, and you have a massive vat of blank tablets, you can put the arnica tablets into the blank tablets and succuss the lot, and you get 31C arnica.
What?
This is what we were told. And we've looked into it, and it checks out via multiple different lines. Is there a homeopath who genuinely believe this? Which I think is again, utterly remarkable.
One wonders how they conduct their quality control.
yeah, exactly. I'm guessing there's not too many compliance officers wandering around.
They could pick up a pill, do a test. Oh, I'm sorry, this has got one more proving before we can sell it.
Well, this was the thing at QED, because we were advising everyone to take 30C all around the world, because at 6C, you're only at 10 to the 12, I think, is it? You're not past Avogadro's limit by that point. So there is a reasonable chance that there's still stuff in it, albeit very small stuff, that might not have much of an effect. And even if it did have an effect, half of it is onion juice anyway, and another sort of not salt, that kind of thing. But at 6C, you've still got molecules in it. There's still something in it. But at 30C, you don't. So we were telling people, make sure you go 30C. We weren't telling anyone to go above that. So what we took at QED was 31C, 31C belladonna, I think, which was actually 1C further than we'd ever overdosed on before. So it was hairy times for a moment. We thought, this is the strongest stuff we've ever advised people to take.
On that matter, let me just read to you the back of the packet here for Brower Natural Medicine Sleep and Insomnia Relief, which contains coffee at 30C, delusions, all sorts of weird things. Get this this is their advice on dosage. Dosage, adults, 2 tablets. Children, 2 to 12 years, 1 tablet. So they're advising that children take a stronger dose than adults.
Yeah, well, what always, when homeopaths, obviously the thing they said when we said we're taking 80 tablets at once, they were like, well, you can do that because it's not dose dependent. It's how many times you take it. It's not about how much you take in one go. Which is fantastic, because you can then accuse them of doubly ripping people off. People can say, okay, if it's not dose dependent, why take a full tablet?
Yeah.
Why not just take a little tiny shaving from the side of the tablet and have that? How small does it have to be to carry the dose if it's not dose dependent?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely,
amazing.
Absolutely. It's one of the sweetest. I mean, yes, of course, with acknowledging that there are sincere people who practice it and really believe in it. But apart from that, it's got to be one of the, pardon the pun, sweetest scams there has ever been.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can almost use that as a proving yourself as to whether the person you're speaking to, debating or whatever, genuinely has any interest in the science, as it were, behind homeopathy, or what they believe to be the science behind homeopathy. Because when you bring up arguments like this, you can tell whether they've ever thought about this before. And so often when you're debating people, you'll find that they have absolutely no interest in debating that point. They'll never stop and go, oh, well, that works because of this reason. They'll just move on to something else. It's a complete deflect. And I think if you were to sit down with someone and actually have them try and explain those really significant problems, then you might get some way towards explaining to people explain to homeopaths why homeopathy doesn't work. But there's a complete unwillingness a lot of the time to listen to people who disagree with them.
One of the best things I heard a homeopath say, and this was on New Zealand television, is, oh, we know it works, we're just waiting for science to catch up.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. This is the great one. It's that constant canard that's trotted out, is that science hasn't figured out how homeopathy works yet, and science doesn't know everything. And then they bring out the X number of years ago they thought the world was flat, which it turns out they didn't. But never mind.
Yeah.
And what's brilliant is, the answer to that is really simple. 200 years ago, they thought homeopathy worked. Yes. And now we know it doesn't. It's not like we thought the world was flat and then round, and now we found out it's flat again. Science is a progression. It's not cyclical as such. You don't go backwards on what you think. You drive forwards. And when you find out you're wrong, you don't then later find out that actually you were right way back at the start before you'd ever looked into it.
Absolutely true. Well, Marsh, what a great opportunity it's been to have a chat with you. I've been meaning to catch up with you for a very long time. I can't believe we haven't spoken to each other before. We must.
It has been a long time. It's ridiculous.
It's just ridiculous. We'll have to do it again soon, I hope. But in the meantime, how can people... I mean, they listen to the Skeptic Zone. Everybody knows where your website is for Skeptics with a K. But in case they went out for a cup of tea during those ads, where can people find you?
You can find the Merseyside Skeptic Society at merseysideskeptics.org.uk, or you can check out 1023 at 1023.org.uk, and that's 1023.org.uk.
Well, together, Marsh, you and I and thousands of people around the world are pushing our case for science and reason, specifically to ending this nonsense and this quackery and witchcraft of homeopathy. So all power to you and all power to everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Hi, this is Travis from Granite State Skeptics, inviting you to this month's Skeptics in the Pub. Monday, April 11th, 7 p.m. at Wings Your Way in Manchester, New Hampshire. This month we're going to be doing something a little different, and we're going to be having Tom Lynch of Paratom.com. He's a paranormal investigator and believer in the afterlife and haunted locations. So please join us while he shares his evidence and his methods. Thank you.
And now here's part 2 of my interview with James the Amazing Randi. I watched some weeks ago your YouTube video about 1023 homeopathy, and suggesting or almost demanding that retailers and manufacturers put a warning label on packets of homeopathy that says, warning, this product is not medicine, or words to that effect.
Yes.
Now, I happen to also have been interviewed by a television program here just the other day, and I made up a little picture with a packet of homeopathy, and overlaid on the packet was that warning sticker, and I held it up to the camera. And indeed, getting back to Norway, I understand that you did the famous attempting to overdose on homeopathic pills in Norway as well.
Yes, sleeping pills. I should be very, pills. Very much asleep, if not dead, by now, because I have to stand there in front of the microphone and grind these things up. They're little sugar pills, little tiny globules. One of them was prepared with arsenic, which doesn't worry me at all because there's no arsenic in there. And the other ones were prepared from caffeine. And these are sleeping pills, and they're prepared from caffeine. But as I may have acquainted you with the interesting fact that the late Martin Gardner, who is my most excellent friend and who I miss greatly, he did a little calculation for me. I called him and I said, Martin, I'd like to know if the concentration of caffeine in these pills is so-and-so. It wasn't caffeine, by the way. It was cafea cruda, which means coffee beans, just the beans itself. And any bean has such a very, very, very small amount of caffeine in it. That makes it even more dilute, if you can imagine that. So
by the time it reaches the pill, you could say it's a has-been.
Or has never been, or whatever.
Has never been.
Yeah. But anyway, I said, how many of these sleeping pills would I have to ingest in order to make sure that I have a good probability of getting one molecule of I'll be all right, keep your seats, of caffeine? And he said, I'll do the calculation for you. And he called me back in half an hour and he said, I hope you're seated. And I was. And he told me that I would have to eat, are you ready for this? I would have to eat the contents of 16 average swimming pools full of sleeping tablets. Now, that's not a pretty sight. Imagine being in a bathing suit, first of all. At one time, reasonably acceptable, but now not so fetching. I don't have many calls to show up at parties in a bathing suit. But can you imagine me jumping into a pool full of nothing but sleeping pills, gobbling them all down? I don't know how I would do that. Being hauled out and asked the pertinent question, do you feel sleepy? And I'd say no and jump into the next swimming pool full of them and gobble them all down. That's an incredible figure, but it's not an exaggeration. Richard, you know that, and I know that, and I hope that your listeners know that. That is not an exaggeration at all. I would have to eat that many pills in order to be pretty sure that I'd inhabited, I'll be again, your seats, that I had imbibed one molecule of caffeine. And it's for a sleeping pill. It's not to wake up.
You know what, Randy, I think I might have to disagree with you on this situation. I think that is an exaggeration because I dare say, and I'll speak about the local situation where there's a company here that mass produces sugar pills and labels them homeopathy. You could find them in almost every pharmacy. I would bet my next hot dinner on there being not even a molecule in any packet they have ever produced of this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I doubt that sincerely.
That's true, except in this particular case, it was Calm's Forte, it was called, and it's widely sold in this country for what reason I'll never figure out. But the concentration of the caffeine, or the cafea cruda, in there was sufficient that I would probably get a molecule of caffeine. Martin figured it out, and I have to trust him. Because the concentration was much more. It wasn't diluted as much as it normally is.
Providing that they even bothered going through the process.
Yes,
and my point, especially in this country, my point is, why would any company bother going through some mystical process when all they have to do is mass-produce sugar pills and send them out to market?
Sure.
End of story.
Yeah, and mix up the packages. It won't make any difference at all. It's just sugar.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any difference at all. The campaign, the 1023 campaign, which it's called these days, but your campaign and the Skeptical Movement's campaign against this witchcraft goes on. But now I'd like to change the topic a little bit, and talk briefly about the $1 million prize from the James Randi Educational Foundation. And the angle I'd like to put to you is, we all know it's there. Of course it's there. It's you've gone to great pains to show to anybody who cares to look into it that the prize is really there. Yet there are still people who will not take your prize with the ridiculous excuses that, oh, the money's not there and James Randi's lying all the time. You must get an awful lot of that.
Oh, yes, I do. As a matter of fact, the facts of the matter are that years ago we advertised that if they wanted proof of it, that we would send them a notarized document. It's an attested, warranted document that is a legal document, and if I were to make a misstatement on that sort of thing, they could sue me, and they could certainly win in any court of law here in America. So I offered to send them a copy of that form, and as we got from the investment which was Goldman Sachs in those days, no longer is now. We've changed. I used to, every month when it came in, I would make a photocopy of it and prepare 5 or 6 photocopies and put them in a drawer here in the other office and be prepared to mail them out. Now, the fact of the matter, Richard, is that in all those years we have been offering this evidence, not one person, believer or non-believer, has ever asked to see that evidence. And yet they continue to say, the money isn't there. No, it's all a fake. James Randi is a magician. He's a liar, and it's not there. But it's open for examination. The notarized document, as I say, is a legal document. It's a binding document. And we certainly could be successfully sued if we made a statement like that saying the $1 million is there and it wasn't there for that purpose. And it is reserved. As a matter of fact, the account is called the James Randi Educational Foundation Prize Account, and it's specifically for that purpose. At the moment, it's about $1.3 million, and we'll take some off the top of it in order to help run the foundation. It'll always be a minimum of $1 million. Not one person has ever asked to see that evidence. Not by fax, not by personal visit, not by mail, not by email. No one has ever asked to see it. And that's astonishing, isn't it?
That is surprising because they rail against the fact that they think it's a phony. And I think of people like in this country of somebody called Victor Zammit, who some of our listeners may be aware of, who is quite an interesting fellow, but
yes.
Rails against you. He's the guy who's put up his own $1 million prize for anybody who can disprove the afterlife.
Yes. Which is impossible. It literally, logically, and semantically, in every way, it's impossible. And I'm sure that Mr. Zammit knows that he's got an impossible task that he has asked people to do. We don't try to disprove anything. As a matter of fact, I don't deny that there are no goblins, vampires, angels, seraphims, devils, whatever, or gods or goddesses of any kind. I don't deny that because I can't prove that there isn't such a thing. I merely say, you say there is, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $1 million if you can prove your case. That's all. We don't ever say that these things don't exist because we can't prove our case.
That's absolutely right. But these personal attacks on your credibility or the credibility of the prize, recently I saw Rupert Sheldrake come out and rail against you and say he'd never go for your prize because he doesn't trust you personally and the prize probably doesn't exist and so on and so on. Instead of just going through a few basic steps, one, to verify the prize is there. And I think he must know. He must really know that it's there, and also that you're not involved with the testing if that's appropriate. You don't even have to be within 1,000 miles of the test.
I don't have to know when it's taking place even, because a lot of them accuse me of putting out negative vibrations when the tests are taking place. Oh, they do. Of course, we laugh at it.
Myself.
But they take that quite seriously. Oh, yes, no, he used his influence, you see. Like in the Uri Geller test where Geller was trying to have people bend spoons that he had on his website on a running cam there.
Oh, yes.
And he said that we had interfered with it, and I had interfered with it personally by putting out evil vibrations.
Well, you're a very powerful man, Randy.
Oh, yes, very true, very true.
We haven't heard much of Mr. Geller in the last few years. Is it more or less accepted now by most people that Geller is or was a magician and with no miracles, or are there still people hanging on? Is Geller still hanging on to this?
Well, he's just opening a series in Sweden. I don't know how many weeks it's going to run, but he's contracted for $400,000, just American dollars we're speaking now, to do this program, and it's called Successor. You know, the same old thing he's been peddling in every country all over Europe, and the media is buying it. But that's further proof of the fact, Richard, that the media is the great enemy here. The media doesn't care whether or not it's true. Geller has been shown to be a mere magician. Nothing more than that. He's doing common conjuring tricks. It's been proven again and again and again. It's been established. It's not just a theory at all. But the media doesn't care about that because they know there will be a certain number of people out there who buy products, who will buy this program, and therefore buy the products.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, and I've got, as some of my listeners may know, I've got quite a close and personal experience with how the media will run with a story simply because it's the story that's going to put, as we say in this country, bums on seats. In other words, people in front of the screen to watch the ads for the soap powders or whatever. Anyway, that's the way the world works, and we try to work with that as much as possible. And every now and then we have our successes, we have our victories, which keeps us all going, I think. And of course, something else that keeps us all going, and I think I've said this before, the highlight of my year, without doubt, is the amazing meeting in Las Vegas at the South Point Casino there. And, last year we had 2 TAMs, one in Australia, of course. But let's look to...
Well, we had 3, one in London as well.
One in London.
You've heard of London. It's a little island just off France.
Just off France. But, yes, so we are now officially in the run-up to the amazing meeting 9 in Las Vegas. I'm quite honoured to be on the bill this year, along with Dr Rachie, sharing the bill with some astonishing speakers. This must give you a big kick every year too, Randy.
Oh, it does. As a matter of fact, though, Richard, I have to admit to you and to your listeners, I'm sure there are more than 2 out there.
I hope so.
Yeah, we all hope so. I must admit to you that I'm a little bit awed and rather cowed by it. When I walk out on that stage and I see all these people rising to their feet, and damn, they came here because of me. Wow. and I always say at all of the amazing meetings, no matter where in the world, I say, I want to meet every one of you. I want to shake your hand and pose for a picture if you want, certainly, and please go out of your way to do that. And then I get masses of email afterwards. Oh, you were too busy. I saw you were talking with some other people, and I didn't want to bother you. I want to be bothered. I want you to come over and say, hey, I like what you do, or I don't like what you do, whatever. I want to hear from these people. But I am awed by the fact that so many people will travel such great distances. Now, the last time in Vegas, we had people from China, from France, from Australia, as you know, and from all over the world, almost every country in the world, Greece. I mean, people that we'd never heard of, they just came because the meeting was there. And that really flatters me enormously and scares me a bit.
Well, it's a wonderful experience. I've been to quite a few TAMs now. The very first TAM I went to, I was very lucky to be an invited speaker, and I had an enormously fun time. Jet lag is a problem, but we learned to deal with that. You must be you're no stranger to jet lag, I'm sure.
No, not at all. But there was a time when I used to have breakfast after landing, and I would say to my body, this is breakfast. And I swear I would hear a little zzz inside as my body reset. But that doesn't happen anymore. It goes zzz like that. It doesn't really get started. It takes me a couple of days to get over it now. And I've just had a double dose of going to Norway, and that's 5 hours difference from here, and then having to readjust again. And it's about the time of the afternoon when I may take a 15-minute nap just to catch up.
And yes, well, I wouldn't miss TAM Vegas for the world. And I wanted to give you the opportunity, as if it needed to be done, because it's such a wonderful thing, to remind our audience, those thinking about maybe coming to TAM, or to prompt them maybe into coming. I can give every recommendation, but I think it's better coming from you.
Well, we have more than 300. It's coming up on 400 shortly registrants already, and the registration, I think it's been only open for a week or 8 days or something. That shows that we're going to be overbooked. And so I urge you, and this is quite honest, I'm not trying to fluff up business or anything, because we don't have any lack of people wanting to get in.
Yeah.
But if you're going to come, folks, I would suggest that you get registered right now, because it's filling up rapidly, and I believe there is a period where the price is discounted for early applicants, and I urge you to apply. I want to meet all of you if I possibly can, but again, I'm not trying to sell it. It's already sold, but if you want to come from Australia, we should have a sizable Australian contingent. Don't you think, Richard?
Oh, absolutely. I'm surprised. If I can use the word, I'm amazed by how many Australians I bump into over at TAM. So it's a delight for me to see so many Australians there. And the hotel itself, the South Point Casino and Spa, it's like a little city all to itself.
Yes,
it's a remarkable place.
Yes, it is indeed. And the beautiful part for me is that I never have to go outside. The airport takes me directly there. I go under a canopy, I go through the swinging doors, and I'm gone for the whole thing. And I live in air-conditioned splendor, and so does everybody. But it is wonderful. Of course, I have to go out to Penn's home, because Penn is selling tours of his home again.
Yes.
And that's pretty well sold out now, I understand. And I'll be out there, and we'll have a lot of laughs, and he'll insult me, and I'll insult him, and we'll give a hug at the end of that. I want to see his family again. He's got a wonderful family and a marvelous home. You've been there, of course.
Actually, Randy, I haven't, and I may well try to sneak onto the bus this time.
Well, no, he calls it the Slammer.
The Slammer.
The Slammer, which is American slang for prison.
Yes.
See, and it's got big concrete walls and such, and he pretty well means it, but it is a remarkable home. It's just astonishing. Your mouth is open all the way through as you wander around. You just don't believe what he's accomplished there.
Well, then I may well have to sneak onto the bus or grab onto the roof or do something to see if I can get out there this year. I'm sure I'll get to see it at some stage. Randy, I'm looking forward to seeing you in a very few months now at the amazing meeting. Again, I keep saying it, but it really is the highlight of my year. The whole experience is a whirlwind of skeptics and great talks and interesting people. Not to be missed. Surely not to be missed. But thank you for sparing some time to talk to the Skeptic Zone today. What a wonderful and interesting life you've had and are still having, I'm delighted to say. Working on your next book, which I'll get you to briefly mention, because I can't wait to read that too.
Yes, this book is called A Magician in the Laboratory, and it's going to deal with all kinds of interesting stuff, including the fact that Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is going to be a guest at TAM this year in Las Vegas, has actually given me a certain amount of an endorsement. A wonderful gentleman, a great scholar. He's the chief at the Hayden Planetarium in New York City. We're very proud to have him attending. And, you can go to the website and you can read it all right there. Excellent.
Excellent, because your books are the ones that once you pick them up, you just can't put them down until you've reached the last page. They're a terrific read. Anyway, let's all get ready, prepare ourselves, go take those jet lag pills, and we'll see you at TAM 9. James Randi, thank you very much.
Looking forward to it, Richard, and to all of Australia. I want to see you all in Las Vegas, every single citizen, okay? See what you can do.
Jeg er Marit. Og jeg er Kristin. Og vi vil tipse deg som norsk lytter av Skeptic Zone om skeptikermiljøet i Norge. Det finnes norske blogger og pubtreff og podcast, og foreningen Skepsis driver med slikt som disse du hører på nå. Sentralt er skepsis.no, og her publiseres det dyptgående artikler, en kalender over aktiviteter og lenker til nyttige ressurser. Skepsis-bloggen oppdateres jevnlig, og det diskuteres heftig på forumet. Så stikk innom og delta du også. Skepsis.no.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. I'm still getting over those ridiculous things about homeopathy. Whatever next, eh? Just shake the pills next to each other and bammo, they're magic. It's beyond ridiculous. Oh well, the fight goes on. I hope you look forward to the Skeptic Zone, keeping you company again next week. Hope to have some more great interviews lined up for you. More reports, more segments. Until then, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.